She went into the jungle of Peru and she went on a series of ayahuasca sessions and then getting given. And she was showing basically what boiled down to what is a CPG island. It's basically a protein flying above a long strand of DNA. That's what she was showing in her ayahuasca sessions. Welcome everyone to Ascension. Tonight we have a banger for you. We're going to be talking about a lot of really interesting stuff. We're going to be talking about, and maybe you're not aware, maybe you are aware, but we're going to be talking about people, famous people, scientific discoveries, artists that have been open to the idea of using psychedelics as their path forward to either to breed creativity and some of the discoveries that were found. And I think you guys are going to find it really interesting. And I guarantee this episode's probably going to bounce around quite a bit because we've just been talking about for the past half an hour, and it's led us into all sorts of interesting discussions. So we're just going to see where this one takes us, but I guarantee this one's going to be a really interesting one. So we're going to open it by handing it over to Jen. Jen's going to read something, and then we're going to go off of that. So let's just rock and roll. I'll hand the reins over to Jen.
All right. Well, basically, this shouldn't be, I know I talked about this book in my interview. It is The Power of Now. And what I found that once you kind of start in this world of psychedelics, you start kind of noticing things like in movies. You're like, come on, there's no way this guy wasn't, using mushrooms or some other psychedelic. And when I read this book's introduction, I immediately was taken aback because I'm like, this, to me, I don't see how this would happen unless you're under the influence. A lot of times people will say, oh, well, it was a dream, or, I fell asleep, and kind of like he did. So I'm just going to read this to you. And if anybody here has had a psychedelic experience, this might sound familiar. I'm just going to read a little bit. So basically he was just kind of lamenting his life. He wanted to kill himself. And he was just saying, I can no longer live with myself any longer. The thought kept repeating itself in my head. Then suddenly I became aware of what a peculiar thought it was. Am I one or two? I cannot live with myself. Therefore there must be two of me, the I and the self, and the I cannot live with, and perhaps only one of them is real. I was so stunned by the strange realization that my mind had stopped. I was fully conscious, but there were no more thoughts. I felt drawn into what seemed like a vortex of energy, and it slowed for a moment at first and then accelerated. I was gripped by intense fear and my body started to shake. I heard the words, resist nothing, as if it spoke inside my chest. I could feel myself being sucked into a void, and it felt like the void was inside myself rather than outside. Suddenly there was no more fear, and I felt myself fall into the void. I have no recollection of what happened next. I was awakened by the sound of chirping birds outside my window, and I have never heard such a sound before. My eyes were still closed, and I saw the image of a precious diamond. If a diamond could make a sound, this is what it would be like. So I'll stop there, but he just kind of goes on and on to talk about how vivid his morning was. So, I haven't talked to this person, but I'm sure you.
I was literally laughing as you were reading it because there's probably 4 different spots there where that is absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt, a psychedelic experience. 100%. Yes.
I just don't see how. You kind of.
I'm just having a little tea, and the next thing I'm launched.
There's the come up. He was gripped by fear for a second. So, I keep finding that. Like I said, in books I'm reading. And this book is absolutely. You read what it's about. It's life changing. So you could see how that would be given to someone in a psychedelic, trip. So. Yeah. Anyways, I thought that was kind of a good opener for this because to me, I just don't see, you're not just going to fall asleep and have this amazing revelation and write, a book that sells over 5 million copies.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that, in some ways it's kind of a shame that they don't give credit where credit is due. And
Mhm.
because I think it would bring more so to the forefront the level of openness that should be about using these alkaloids. I think that's kind of the shame of it. But at the end of the day, like it just boils down to being given this information. And see, I often wonder if you get given information, like just a thought here, just thinking, like if you get given this information and you take credit for it, if you believe in karma in any way, what happens next? Do you know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
I've always been really big on making sure credit is given. Even if
Right.
it's something really small. Like even when I quote something, like even a story I heard from some random ass podcast, like it doesn't matter. Like whatever I hear, it's like, "Oh, even if I don't remember, I'll still give credit that I don't remember the name, but this is where I got it." Like I'm
Mhm.
I'm very careful with that. Yeah, but there's no way that that was just some dream revelation. And it's
It
funny.
wouldn't have been published, though. That's the
Yes.
reality. When this was published, he wouldn't have been able to get it. The publishers wouldn't touch it.
No.
So I'm sure
No.
that's why it was basically censored.
Yeah.
But maybe through conversation that we're having and so many others, that people won't be afraid to be talking about where they're really getting their inspiration from.
Yeah, and I think people are starting to wake up and realize that these are not bad things. Again, and I've said it a million times already, like it boils down to the 70s and the war on drugs, which has really changed our perception of all of these compounds. There's no such thing as a bad drug. There really isn't. There can be misuse. And
Mm-hmm.
there can be certain types of people that shouldn't touch certain types of compounds. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, they're inanimate. They're not bad. They're not good. They're tools. It would be like
Mm-hmm.
blaming a hammer for going on some sort of a rampage, right? How,
Exactly.
how
Yeah.
do you blame the hammer? You can't blame the hammer. You have to blame the person. And I think there is a big awakening that's going on right now, and I'm really happy that it is finally starting to happen, because I've been a huge advocate of this stuff for, man, what feels like forever. Like I've said before, I can remember talking about this stuff just in trick trades in the room years ago, before even something like microdosing became more mainstream. And like I've said, people hit me up in direct message, and it's like, "Oh man, yeah, I'm worried about you. You're gonna fall off." And it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? These compounds, you do not want to do them all the time. You want to do them rarely. It's not like you
Yeah.
crave doing them. In fact, you fear doing
Mhm.
them, and for good reason. They are intense. So, but you know what's interesting about what Jen just read, and from The Power of Now. While doing some research for this, I found the same thing in the topic that we're talking about, with people not wanting to give credit to the psychedelic, right? And while I was going over some of this, there's so many scientific and artistic findings throughout the years. And some people they said they got it in a dream, or they said that they got it in a hypnotic trance or state. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, there's one that really kind of comes out that's like really interesting. And actually, there's a couple that really stick out. Just let me quickly find it.
And just real quick while Pat's
Yep.
looking, I just wanted to say it's like, well, why are we talking about this today? And it's really all about the people that we are talking about. Eckhart Tolle, he was obviously went through a conscious expanding experience, whatever the experience was. He was expanding his awareness, and he saw things that changed his life. And the book that he wrote has changed many other people's lives. And it's the spirit of problem solving, which is who we are as traders, or who we're striving to be. And so as we kind of talk about these other people who have invented things, who've been extraordinary in their creative pursuits in life, they've solved critical problems that we all face.
Yes.
And so this can serve as some inspiration for us to say, wow, they're just like us. They put their pants on the same way. They are humans. They have faults. They mess up. They've screwed up. But they've always come back and said, I'm not giving up. The reason we're talking about them is because they refuse to give up, in most cases, they have achieved something that's affected all of our lives.
Yeah, they've achieved a level of greatness and mastery. And sometimes, well, all the time, every single time, anyone that has ever achieved that level of greatness has always done and lived by the motto, I will do whatever it takes. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if it means exploring different avenues, unconventional avenues, then yes, I will do it. I will do what it takes, whatever it takes. And I think because there are those two types of people, the people that are doers and the people that just, kind of think about doing things and then they're too scared to do it. The ones that really have the stomach to go on, they live by that. It's by whatever means necessary. I will get through to the other side. And it's so relevant to trading. It's ridiculous because that's why there's such a high fail rate. Well, 100% of the people that have interest in day trading get into it for the wrong reasons. Everybody, 100%. Everybody. They get into it because they want to make money. That's it. Full stop. That's the only reason at the beginning. Now, as you progress, you start to evolve and you're like, okay, well, that ain't working. Now I got to start working on myself because it has to do with emotional control and mentality and everything else. And there's a lot of hurdles when it comes to mentality and working on yourself that you do need a little kick in the pants and you need an extra helper. And that's where these things can come in. Now, it's not for everybody, but for a lot of people, they can be very useful tools, right? But now to go back, because I'm kind of ready for this, there's a couple of interesting things that people said that they found on dreams. And this Alan Huang, had to do with his idea had to do with computing and design. And it was an insight into lasers that assisted in design of laser computers. And he gave it to a dream. Now, there's another one here, Dr. Stephen Baker. He's into chemistry and neurochemistry. And he said that a childhood lucid dream inspired a career pursuing research into psychedelic DMT. Or maybe you did some DMT and then you said maybe there's something to it. Now, you may have had a childhood lucid dream that maybe you made a connection with while you were on DMT, and then you decided to pursue it because you realized something was there. So maybe the root was that lucid dream, but let's be honest, you don't have a lucid dream when you're a child and then get into psychedelic DMT research.
Right. That doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. And it's another thing that we talk about in trading, that, the truth behind the trade, or the truth in general, is always within the words that you use. Like, you can always get down to the root cause. Like I ask all of my members when they ask me a question, if they have a hard trade and they type it in chat, like, okay, this is where, what is wrong here? Well, they already know. You already answered your question in the words that you use. You know the answer to the question. So instead of hitting send, just stop and reread your question and really read it. Like, don't just glance over it. When you type out a question, the answer is always within your question. And it's not difficult to see that, right? So I've always found that really interesting because a lot of people they're always relying on somebody else to give them the answers, where the answers are always within, right? And that's another thing that these powerful tools can give you. They can give you or help you realize the answers that are already there. And then on the other hand too, like, even just as me saying that, because we are going to dig a little deeper into more so inventions and thoughts that people have had, there's something to it. There's something deeper there with these alkaloids. Now, it doesn't matter the psychedelic. I know we mainly talk about psilocybin, about mushrooms. That's kind of our bag. That's what we use for the most part as a helper. And it's something that it doesn't matter the compound. Adam and I actually had a little conversation because Jen and Adam were talking about, There's a lot of discoveries that were made on LSD. It's not really what we talk about and what we do, but and then I kind of said, well, it's kind of irrelevant, the compound. It doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is it's a different realm that's kind of giving us these answers. And that's all that matters. We're obviously getting information. And I pointed out to Adam, like all of these alkaloids, they're literally, they are so closely related. If you move something slightly up or slightly down, it becomes a different alkaloid. Like they are that close. They're essentially non-identical twins. Like they're very close. Now, we don't need to get into the whole science behind it, like molecular biology and chemistry and stuff. Like that's not what we're doing here, but they are that close. So it doesn't matter the compound. It would be the difference between having a claw hammer and I don't know, some sort of a flat-faced hammer, right? A rock hammer, right? Both hammers, but they do slightly different things, right? So, and that's really all that matters. Was there anything that really stuck out to you guys when it comes to either inventions or creations or epiphanies that were found while using these?
Well, I think the big one, Pat, and I'm sure it's on your list, I have it on my screen here as well, is Francis Crick.
Yeah.
And because it's interesting because the whole conversation around DNA is something that reoccurs in almost every pattern or every venue. So and it brings us into this deeper connection of who we are and what are we capable of. So that's definitely at the top of our list. Jen, do you have any?
Well, I don't have any like as far as like specific, inventions or anything like that. But I know Elon Musk does ketamine and also uses psilocybin, and obviously, he's had a lot of success in creative ventures and things like that. So I know for sure that he uses them, and his the media kind of tried to smear him for that and saying,
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, there was a bunch of nasty articles that said he should be kicked off the board and blah, blah, blah. Just like, it's ridiculous.
Which is so funny because when you take the biggest woke poster boy, I'm not saying he was woke, but the woke side they just love to talk about Steve Jobs. Like that's their guy, right? Well, Steve Jobs famously used LSD and psilocybin. It's one of his big realizations that he had was to focus on the quality of the product instead of mass production and quantity, essentially. It is one of his big revelations. Now, obviously, there's way more. I'm sure he had way more, but that's the one that's, really, really out there. Steve Jobs used LSD as well as psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and I'm sure other compounds as well. I find it interesting that people will use that as a weapon against others, right? Just because they don't like them. It's like, oh, you're a druggie. It's like, you're an idiot. If you say that, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, and you lose 100% credibility in my book. You have no credibility. If you go down that route, it's like you don't understand how these tools work. Like to use it as a hit or a smear against someone is absolutely ridiculous. Those people that do that could really benefit from this. And I'm in the boat that, politicians, I think they should have to have a certain amount of either psilocybin or ayahuasca trips before they get elected into office. I think we would be a lot gentler in a good way. We would be a lot more empathetic. Those people would be a lot more empathetic. They wouldn't be so money driven. They would start thinking of others, because that's when you realize we are truly all connected. I think people miss the whole point that there is literally 6 degrees of separation. A lot of people have heard that 6 degrees of separation, but a lot of people don't know what that means. Each and every one of us on the planet, whether you're in Zambia or in the United States, or take two people, one in Zambia, one in the United States, even our so-called enemies in Iran or Afghanistan, just regular people, right? We are 6 people removed from that person. That's how closely we know that person. It's like a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, or some sort of a relation.
We all know that statement, but I don't think people, to really fully understand what that means. It really, what that tells us is you have the ability by reaching out to 6 people to solve virtually any problem you have in your life.
Yes.
Because of all of the paths of education of someone who knows somebody. And there's no reason we should be stuck. If that is true, and we all know it's true because we all hear it and we all agree with it, no one argues it, then 6 people, 5 fingers and 1 finger on your hands, you can solve any problem you have, whether you're struggling with money, you're struggling with your health, you're struggling with relationships, you're struggling with anything. It just shows there's no excuse not to find a solution to the problem. Expand your awareness, dig into the people that you know, find out who they know, and you're never stuck. I mean, it's one of the most empowering statistics you could probably ever offer somebody who's struggling.
And I think, like, even to expand on that, there's that side of it. But I think one of the biggest problems we have in this world today is that tribalism. Like, everyone's on one side or another. Where, again, if you actually sit back and really think about that 6 degrees of separation, that person that you're calling a fuckwit on Twitter, you know that person. You know that person within 6 people.
6 people, yeah.
Right? Like, it should start making people maybe pull the reins back a little bit, maybe hit that brake pedal a little bit before acting out on emotion. And that's something that can definitely help you with your trading as well. When you start to have these thoughts and these realizations, you start putting it into practice with your trading as well. Like, that's what should be going on, right? Like, this is why we focus so much on mentality, mindset, and getting rewired correctly in trick trades, is because it translates into your trading. If you can be driving down the road and somebody cuts you off, right? And you immediately want to fucking tailgate them and go get them, right? Maybe give them the finger, flip them off, yell at them at the red light. And you stop yourself from doing that. And you think to yourself, it's like, and there's a million other ways that you can stop yourself. But even just that one with that 6 degrees of separation, it's like, you know, this guy's a friend of a friend. I know this guy. We're just 6 people removed, right? Like, that should stop you. And it's kind of a hard thought to wrap your head around, because it's not just locally, it is worldwide. And then if you can do it locally, this is how things can start expanding and working their way out worldwide. Like, all of the world's problems, right? And this is going to be really idealistic, where I'm more of a realist, but, you know, okay, we'll take it for what it is. But you can literally solve the world's problems by just that one thought. You can. If people just got together, it's something that I said, you know, we could have put a stop to that bullshit 3.5, 4 years ago. That could have been stopped if we just stuck together. But everybody's scared to say something. They don't want to say something. But we're all brothers and we're all sisters. Straight up. We all know each other, right? So why are we doing this? Why are we allowing this to happen? And the crazy thing is, we are still 6 degrees of separation away from every one of those pig politicians. So it's like, why can we not start communicating to get through to those people, right? To the lawmakers and the people that are making these problems, because that's where the problems ultimately go, or they start. There's just such a connection there. And again, these tools, these compounds, they can help you have these thoughts. And maybe you get stuck on, you can't quite wrap your head, and we'll just use this as an example because we're on it. You can't quite wrap your head around the thought of that 6 degrees of separation. Go into that realm before you go under your next trip. And maybe that's your intent. Have an intention to understand that better. Go in and you will get given, maybe you'll get given that information to help you process that.
You know, I know you're probably talking about this because things that you were, you know, revealed in one of your trips. And I had the same thing. I know we talked about this last time where, you know, I had something similar where it's like, we're all one, we're all innocent, and then we go through the world, like I was talking about. I know Jackson mentioned that he had something, that we're all connected and we're all one. And it's just funny. It's like the more and more people that I talk to that go in, to a trip, that kind of pops up, even though you're not thinking about that, or that's not your intent at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how many people you talk to that get that lesson, and it does make you start thinking, and sometimes I'll have a, like, oh, I should help this person, or I need to do better to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's not at all what I was going in there for, but it always amazes me how that message over and over again comes up every single time with people when you start talking to them about it.
It's a universal lesson, right? It's a universal lesson. Every time you go, it's almost every single person. If you go on these trips multiple times, at some point you're going to get the same message. And it's like, this is why I do think it should be on some level, some kind of a prerequisite for positions of authority and positions of power, because then you will be less likely to abuse that power and that authority. I think police should have to go under a series of controlled or whatever trips as well. I think anything that comes to when you have that authority, that written authority over someone, I do think that that's something that should be explored. I don't think any bad would come of it, right? Like, the problem is we all have these preconceived notions, or a lot of people do, because again of the damage that fucking Timothy Leary did. He did so much damage in the 60s that I don't think people realize, how much damage he really did. I know there's some that do, but he really set us back. And I think if it wasn't for him, and nobody else came and ruined it as well, and we just started using them as like responsible adults through the years, since starting in the 50s and 60s and going forward, I really think we would be in a lot different position right now. I really do. But again, you give these pigs, these politicians, you give them that out, they're going to take it. And that's why you need to be very cautious and careful with the words that you use. And you need to be responsible with this sort of stuff. But I do think it's important that people use this sort of stuff properly. And again, each and every one of these people on these lists that we're going to be talking about here, they went in with an intended purpose. But to go back to what Adam said about DNA, there's something there. And one of the issues that a lot of people don't understand the gravity of what DNA is. People know what DNA is, right? If you asked almost anyone on the street, wherever across the world, they could give you a half-assed idea of what DNA is. But again, they don't understand the gravity of it. And to go back to Francis Crick, the discovery of the double helix, and there's a lot more, like more so he gets into the genetic code after it was given to him. But if you look at old cave paintings and rock paintings and carvings, you're going to see that double helix. And it's something that is given to you in these spaces. So it's really no mystery as to why so many discoveries have been made. Talking about, and I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I want to just quickly mention, how much has been given to us over when it comes to DNA and the genetic code and all of that. There was an American biologist that went into the jungle in Peru, and I don't know the American biologist's name. She went into the jungle of Peru, and she went on a series of ayahuasca sessions, and she was given a specific example or a technical teaching of something that she was trying to figure out, again, going in with intent and then getting given. And she was showing basically what boiled down to what is a CPG island. And it's basically a protein flying around or flying above a long strand of DNA. That's what she was showing. And then from there, obviously, like I'm no, molecular biologist, so it's not like I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, she was given a very specific technical teaching that she was showing this in her ayahuasca sessions. And there's something there. That's not something that you can simply dream up and see. It was, again, something at the time. It helped her create the theory behind these CPG islands, right? Now, that's really interesting. Why are these technical teachings being given to us when it comes to DNA? Francis Crick was given the double helix as he was trying to search to get down to what is the essence of the singular molecule, right? And that's the DNA molecule, right? And then he was given that. And then this woman was given the CPG islands. And it really makes you think that because of these cave paintings as well, did people 10, 20, 40,000 years ago, did they know what DNA was? Is there more of a message there? I just think that that's really interesting. And, Kerry Mullis, his development of the PCR, which is polymerase chain reaction. What this is, it's a process that generates multiple copies of a specific DNA sequence. Well, that was discovered on LSD as well. Like, if you really think about that, that's so mind-blowing. And there's more. There's a long list of DNA and genetic discoveries that were made on these.
Well, the Cosmic Serpent talks a lot about the pharmaceutical discoveries that have been made in the forest and how the plants will basically reveal themselves in compounds and components that nobody has any business knowing.
Yep.
And so that's, it's a book we'll reference because it really goes into a very deep analysis of how this knowledge is being extracted from the forest within the forest.
Yes.
Through the aid of other plants from the same forest.
Yep.
And, Pat's talking about some extremely complicated problems.
Mm-hmm.
And if these kinds of problems have to do with the engineering of our bodies, what are the problems that we're going to face? Yep. It's going to be like tic-tac-toe compared to these problems for the plants to help us with.
Absolutely. And for people that want to reference on some of Jeremy Narby's work, which he's the writer of The Cosmic Serpent, as well as Plant Teachers. That Plant Teachers is a really interesting one too, by the way. That's definitely worth a read. But The Cosmic Serpent is something that's really interesting. I do highly recommend both of those books. And Jeremy Narby, if you look him up as an author, he does have more. They're not super long reads or anything like that. It's not like some 1,000-page textbook. It's not dry. It's really good. I know everyone that's interested in this. Like, if you're watching this, you're obviously interested in the subject. Go seek out those books. They're great information. And like Adam said, these are highly complex. I don't understand. I don't begin to want to understand or claim to understand that I know about the inner workings of CPG islands. Every time I reference that, I need to look at it on my notes, for bloody sake. So if those types of highly technical teachings are given, our problems as day traders are very solvable. And they're solvable if you're having problems wrapping your head around something very specific when it comes to trading. Why not take the leap and try something like that? If you are a person that, doesn't have any type of, major mental illness or anything like that, then I say, why not? Like, you have to be careful with these tools, right? And that's why I'm giving the warning against, unless you have some issues or some sort of problem there's no reason why you can't, because sometimes we do need a little bit of help. The amount of information that's been given people, scientific discoveries, like it really is mind blowing. And, and again, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit here, but when it comes to DNA and all of those technical teachings, I think a lot of people dismiss it because they don't understand like the complexity, and they don't understand the downscaling to get that. So into that DNA molecule, that strand is 2 meters long. Well, 2 meters long to fold that many times. You cannot fold a piece of paper more than 7 times. Try it. It's impossible. I've tried it. Can't do it. No matter the size of the piece of paper. And I understand that a DNA strand is not a piece of paper, but it really makes you think that there's definitely some design, some highly advanced design going on there.
And obviously it wants us to know that it's there and that it exists and to learn from it. Otherwise it wouldn't occur, all the way back to cave paintings up to some most sophisticated minds in the scientific world. So obviously it wants to be known. Knowledge wants to be found. That's what's so cool about this world. Like, knowledge loves to be discovered. It is its own expansion. So it's like the more we open our minds and our hearts to knowledge, it's going to seek us just as much as we want to seek it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for myself personally, the amount of help that I've gotten from these compounds, specifically mushrooms, and just trying something differently just a few nights ago. And I think that was really interesting as well. They can kind of come in riddles too. I don't want to say like a lot of the times it's just absolutely given to you, because sometimes it's going to make you work for it. And you're going to initially think it's something, and then you need some time to really think about it, that integration period where you need to digest the information that's given. So I think it's important too to note that if you get given something, don't just immediately act on it. Really be cautious. Well, cautious isn't the right word, but just like pump the brakes a little bit and really do some thinking about it, because sometimes this information's given almost in a riddle, right? And it makes you search for it. Something that's interesting is there's a rabbi, Benny Shannon, that's someone that people should really look up. And Benny Shannon was talking about, he's done ayahuasca 1,000 times or something like that, or 1,100 times. And he's a biblical scholar. And one of the realizations that he got was, if God wanted to hide the secrets of the universe, where would he hide them, right? And I think it's a valid question, because there's definitely secrets hidden out there, but where would you hide them? Like all the mysteries of life, where would you hide them? Would you hide them on the moon? He asked himself. And it's like, well, no, because at some point, some powerful men are going to be able to get themselves there, and they may not be worthy of that information. Would you hide these secrets in the bottom of the ocean? Well, again, no, there's powerful men and women that may be able to get down and find these secrets that aren't worthy of them. And then he kind of came to the realization, well, the best place to hide is within everybody's mind, because only the worthy will go seek it out, right? And I think that's a really interesting proposition right there. Each and every one of us essentially have the ability to unlock anything. It's all within our minds, because where would you hide it? Like it's kind of funny that he put it that way, because if you think about it, it's like, yeah, that's actually a perfect place to hide everything.
Very few will do it.
Very, very few will ever, because people are scared of themselves. They're scared of the truth, right? Like, I think it's almost human nature to be afraid of that truth, right? It protects us. So only the very few brave souls out there will actually go on and go searching for it. So again, we all have the ability to unlock the secrets of the universe. It's inside all of our minds. And that's a really interesting thought. And I think people need to seek that type of truth. But again, it starts with truth, right? It's one of the reasons why we started the Truth Behind the Trade series, which we'll be doing another episode soon, because it gets down to the truth, right? Like, the truth is everything. There's no bullshitting yourself, especially when you do a high dose of any psychedelic, oh, there's no bullshitting yourself there. Like, it won't allow you to. And this is why people have their so-called bad trips. It's not a bad trip. It's because they're confronted with what they're seeing in the mirror, right? They're looking in the mirror at that time. That's something to know, right? Like, if you go on one of these journeys and you get confronted with something that makes you scared and uncomfortable, it's because that's its intended and designed purpose. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable and scared at that moment. Like I talked about with Adam here a few nights ago, and I wasn't going to get into this, but I'll just touch on it really briefly. I find it really interesting when people talk about taking DMT. A lot of the lead up and the fright that I had, or the fear that I had, was due to other people's projections of their fear. And what I mean by that, if you watch any video on DMT, or read anything on DMT, you'll hear people say how scary it is, and it can be terror filled. No, it's not that. It's intense, but it's not terrorizing. It's different. But people will always kind of make that connection between intensity or uncomfortability and fear, right? And there's a big difference there. And once you settle into that and you understand what's going on, that's when you get given some information. And the information I was given, although it wasn't a lot and it was very quick because my dosage wasn't quite high enough, it was something really interesting that could lead to destruction and creation, which is why I went in there. I went in there with a very specific purpose, dealing with some of my issues, my selfishness, because I needed to become very selfish in order to get where I am. And that's something that I need to now kill. I no longer need to possess that selfish trait. So it's one of my intentions that I went under. And then I saw something which could very well be taken as the God of destruction, which at the same time is the God of creation. So it's interesting, the little lessons that you get given, and you can take it kind of multiple ways. And these are the types of teachings that all of these people that we've mentioned have been given. Like, there's always two ways that you can go. You can kind of take the negative, focus on the negative, or you can focus on the positive and actually get some proper work done. So I find it really interesting that it just depends on your emotional control. And I think that these types of things are only going to help you as a trader, because that's what you need when you're behind the screens. And I know this episode, it's really all over the place, and it might be hard to follow for some. I get that. I understand that. But there's a bigger idea here. There's something to really learn from this, that if you can take something that can help you have that emotional control, or make you think, or make you curious, or make you want to discover new things, then why wouldn't you, right? Like, it's only going to help you behind those screens. And it'll give you the ability to sniff out bullshit as well. You know, Adam brought this up the other day. His ability to sniff out bullshit has increased, you know, through the use of these compounds, as well as just being in the room, being exposed to someone with that type of mindset. Like, and these are the types of discoveries and epiphanies that you can have, right?
Well, it comes down to learning how to cut out the lies, because, you know, our lives are filled with lies everywhere, whether it's on the outside or the inside. Getting to this point where I'm not going to accept any more lies in my life, and I've got to ferret them out. Just real quick on what you were saying about your DMT experience and receiving information, and what Jen read here in The Power of Now, and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. What sets them apart? We all have genius ideas. We all have access to them. We have to cut the lies, and we have to learn to take action. That's why the people we're talking about today, they're the ones that took action. Mm-hmm. You know, they're the ones that said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to study the biology more. I'm going to write a paper about this. They put themselves into action, whether maybe it's past talking about politics and reaching out to our politicians and letting our voice be heard. It comes down to, as traders, we have to take action. Otherwise, we're nobody.
Yeah.
We fail at everything. And that's what that common thread is, I think, in today's discussion is you get the information wherever you get it from, but then you got to decide to take action and figure out whatever is in between the action you need to take and that thought, and get around or through or above or under the obstacles that are in the way, which is usually us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, again, it boils down to at all costs. Like, they didn't accept that it's like, oh man, I don't understand how to build my company, Steve Jobs. What way should I take? And then just be like, oh well, and then just like stop at that, whatever that is, full stop. It's like, no, he decided to go on a journey to dig deeper and actually get to the what he needed to do. What do I need to fucking do? Right? And then that's when he comes with the realization. It's like, no, it's not quantity. I need to work on perfecting the product to make it actual quality, make it something that when people pick it up, they feel it. They feel the weight of an iPhone. They feel the weight of a MacBook. They like, whether you like them or not, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. When you look at the build quality is there. They've always put design over all else, right? Or with Elon Musk, to fucking hammer on that guy or think he's like less than what he is, you're crazy. That fucking guy doesn't know how to just sit on an idea. He's one of those guys that no matter what comes to mind, no matter how big the fucking obstacle is, he does it. He takes action. That's what this is about. It's about taking action. It's not hitting a roadblock and then just being like, oh, well, I can't go any further. Like, how many times do I see people fucking do that as traders? Too many. And it drives me absolutely up the wall. It's like, oh, you gave up that easily? Fuck, man. It's like, you can't hang with me. Like, not even close. You're not even in the same realm. Because it's like, I will never accept defeat. I will never accept failure. It won't happen. I may fail, but that won't be the end of the story. The story doesn't end there. And just like with these men and these women, they sought out a different way, no matter what, at all costs. I will find out. It's like, I don't understand how this protein does this. I'm going to go march my ass into a Peruvian jungle and go sit with a legitimate real life wizard and then get given CPG islands. It's like, what? It's like, yes, that is the only way forward, right? Like, it's not about even using psychedelics. It's about not taking, I'm not going to take no for an answer, no matter what that is. I'm just going to push forward no matter what. No matter what gets in my way, I'm going to get to the truth of it. It's like, no matter what, at all costs, I'm going to get there. That's what separates a winner from a loser. Straight up. I know more losers than I do know winners. I don't associate with the losers because they're cancerous. They will give up. Why would I want to surround myself with someone that thinks like that? Because at some point they will give up on you. Because it's just a matter of one roadblock too many for whatever that roadblock may be. And it's like, that's where it starts. It's cutting cancerous people out of your life and starting to listen to stuff like this or other people that have these types of thoughts that will not take no for an answer. Like, no matter what, they're not going to take no for an answer. Those are the people you want to surround yourself by. Men like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. Now, was Steve Jobs an asshole? Yeah, maybe he was an asshole. But a lot of these people that are, they're a little eccentric, right? And that's fine too, right? Like, there's so many discoveries to be made, and to just stop because you hit a roadblock is insanity to me. I don't understand that, right? But again, everyone wants to sit on their ass, man, and nobody wants to do anything about it. This is a tool that you can use, right?
What's so crazy is the roadblock is the lesson.
Exactly.
That's what's so crazy. It's like where you're hit is where you're supposed to learn. That is the gate to the next realm of whatever it is you're trying to pursue. That is the velvet rope that says, oh, you want to get in here? Well, prove to me you're worthy.
Yep.
That's all that is.
Yep.
It's nothing more complicated.
Yeah, I was just going to say, talking about how your DMT experience, you were kind of scared because you had read all kinds of horror stories. But I think the difference is that if these people go in with just, oh, I'm just going to go in
Yeah.
and meet some DMT entities and blah, 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 then they're going to get kind of smacked in the face when something doesn't go exactly according to plan or what they're expecting, or, they're just kind of loosely going in there for more of a fun experience. But for people that use them like us, we have a very specific purpose. And it's like, oh, okay, I just saw something that looked like the god of destruction. What does that mean? What's my takeaway here? We're going through it with a different attitude. And I think that's as far as, people that are interested in trying these, that's a big takeaway for me is if you go in with the purpose, when something kind of scary happens, it doesn't quite catch you by surprise, because it's kind of like you're going on like a really tough mountain climb or something like that, because you know that it's going to be tough. There may be some uncomfortable situations and things like that. So I think that we're a little bit able to deal with them a little better because we have such an intense, like, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get past this plateau. Yeah. I don't give a crap. If some scary thing comes into to my trip, who cares? It just move on. Whereas these people that are just going for recreational use, it can get scary because they're not expecting to get any, they're just expecting to see little flowers and I don't know, whatever, so I think it's just all how you go into it, I think is a huge deal.
Oh, 100%. And that's like one of the things that saved me in that situation is the confidence in myself. Even though like that was in the back of my mind, that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to actually like get in the right headspace to actually do it, was because of all the noise, right? So once I inhaled, you go 0 to light speed like that. And even that's slow, like compared to how fast the come up is. It's instantaneous. It's light speed. Wow. Before you even breathe out, you're at 100%. So it's like, as soon as that happened, you tense up. My heart rate spiked because I was wearing my monitor, just because I was interested in it from like almost like a science aspect of it, like what it does physiologically. So as soon as that hit, though, it was super intense, and I was able to calm myself down because I just said to myself, and it's in the video that I took of it, it's like, this is what you wanted. You're here for a reason. And that was it. And right then, heart rate went down and immediately settled in. And it's like, whatever happens, happens. I don't care what it shows me. Like it's not anything to be afraid of. Like when you have confidence in yourself, and that's another thing, like a lot of people they don't have confidence in themselves nowadays. And that has a lot to do with being like force-fed this mental garbage on social media that you're not good enough, right? You always need to compare yourself to others. And I mean, there's so many bigger ideas here of why society's so sick. And I do truly believe that this is one of the paths forward. It is the path forward. I believe it's the path forward. And before I forget, there's one more book that's really interesting. It's called The Bigger Picture by Alexander Briner. And I do think people should take a look at it. He's someone that has just taken part in the new DMT studies where they are literally mapping out DMT world, because they do think it's actually a physical world or a metaphysical world, however you want to put it. But he took part in it, and it's not just about the study. It's the bigger picture, and the title's really good. There's one chapter in there I wasn't a huge fan of, where he's kind of going into society's problems, and it kind of gets a little fucking woke for my liking, and it's like, oh, you're kind of a product of the system. I don't think he's quite broken out, although he thinks he's broken out of the matrix. I think part of the matrix is still in him. That's just my personal opinion, to go down that road of critical race theory and stuff like that. Some of the things that he did talk about, it's valid, but to put that in the book, it was almost like
Forced.
Yeah, it felt forced, right? Like it really did when you're reading it. But other than that chapter, it is a phenomenal book. I do recommend taking a look at his podcast, which I just discovered. He's on lots of podcasts right now. He's got a lot of great ideas and thoughts about the path forward. And just like him, that's what I believe this is the path forward, right? And it's, people just don't need to be scared. Have some faith in yourself that you'll be all right. Like I tell my traders, there's nothing, when you are trained properly, there's nothing that the fucking market can throw at you that can ever catch you off guard. Just like every day, it doesn't matter whether the stock goes up or the stock goes down and I've entered and it starts going against me. I'm trained. I've worked on my training. I know I can find my way out, right? And that's what this is about. When you're in these spaces, you can always find your way out. Mm-hmm. Again, when you understand what LD50 is, your lethal dose, it's impossible. You will not die. You're not going to fucking die. And that's all that matters. It may feel like you've died, and you may have the thought, it's like, shit, I think I died. Did I die? But you're okay. You're not dead. You're going to come back in 10 to 12 minutes on that particular alkaloid, right? But it's like, I know we've been around. This episode is all over the place. But I do think it's an interesting one. We hit a lot of topics, and there's even some stuff that I didn't get to about George Zipf, ZIPF. Look up that and the relationship to the language of proteins. Woo! Talk about that, man. That's some pretty mind-blowing stuff. In the non-coded DNA, junk DNA, there's a language there, and it fits his language model. And that's a really mind-blowing read for any of you that are interested in that. That could be a whole podcast on its own. It's pretty mind-melting stuff. So I'm sure there's lots that we didn't get to. But you guys got anything else?
Well, the only thing that I would like to say is that, I mentioned in the first podcast that I was a little apprehensive to try mushrooms and, just kind of nervous about it. So part of my studies, just kind of checking them out, I did look this up and I did find, it actually made me feel better. I was like, man, Steve Jobs has done these, Elon Musk has done these, and I started seeing a lot of these neat scientific and discoveries, also
a lot of authors
creatively, a lot of authors. And, I just found it kind of like a door. I realized that that's what it was. It was kind of a gateway, if you will, to get to this kind of creative thing that these creative and, obviously genius discoveries or through the use of psychedelics. So it kind of really helped take my fear away and some of the stigma about it. Cause it was people that I'm like, man, I liked that book. That was really good. So, and then, like I said, of course, now that I'm like, they did psychedelics. They're not
for sure.
They're just not saying it.
Yeah.
So that was my own thing. It really did help me.
That's a really good point, actually. I think to kind of get in towards the end of this is, and a lot of these people, you have to remember when they did these, especially when it comes to a lot of these scientists, and geneticists and everything else, these are very old, frail men. Okay. So if they were all right, I'm sure you'll be just fine. Because I think that's probably on people's minds as well. It's like, can my body handle this? I'm not in the greatest of shape, blah, blah, blah. Right. Unless you have super high blood pressure, maybe you should get your blood pressure under control first, because your blood pressure will definitely spike. But it does give somebody some confidence that there's a lot of great men and women of the world that have given us some life and world-changing information and discoveries, and that have won Nobel prizes. And a lot of these discoveries were made on that. And like Jen said, men like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and these are highly admirable men. Whether you like them personally or not, you cannot take away from their accomplishments. These are the most motivated and driven men on the fucking planet, man. And if they're using these as tools, then maybe it's okay for me to use them, right? And it's like, I think that's a valid thought. I really do. And it's about seeking out the right type of information too that's out there on the internet, because there's a lot of bullshit. Like, there really is. There's a lot of information that's out there that I almost think it feels almost like psyopish-ish. Where it's like, it's kind of designed to keep people away from this sort of stuff. Like the demon almost got me and I was able to resist. DMT almost got me. The demons almost got, like, and it's just like, it's fucking nonsense is what that is. It's like, that sort of stuff is only harmful, and it's in the same category as people like Timothy Leary, that all it does is set this shit back. As well as I've mentioned some other people that do set it back. But there's a lot of great, really well-informed people out there. Graham Hancock is another person that, his book Visionary, his original book Supernatural, that's great. And then he did an updated version called Visionary. It's the exact same book, just a couple little differences and some updates to some of his thoughts throughout the years. That's a real deep dive into the world of the supernatural. I think that one's a really highly interesting book that's out there that I think people would enjoy reading. And he talks a lot about this with Francis Crick. There's a whole subject that's where actually I pulled the whole that American biologist that got given the CPG islands. Although I don't have that person's name. I'm sure I can find it somewhere. It might even be on the list, to be honest, that I pulled up. I'm going to take a look afterwards. But yeah, I mean, that's all I got, guys.
No, I mean, I think that was good. This is just all about great people or problem solvers. That's what they all come down to.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to.
Doesn't matter what walk of life they walked, they problem solved. And we can take that and bring it into our career.
Absolutely. So I think I'm going to wrap this one up. Thanks, Adam.
Right,
thanks,
Pat.
Jen. Have a great evening.
Thanks. Yeah, ready.
And until next time, guys, adios.